د فدایانو په باب څه نظر لري؟ دا ښه کار دی او که بد کار؟
دا خو په اسلام کې ستایل شوی کار دی، لکه چېرې د شی واقعات پیښ شوله په دغه شوراوه کې یو فدایي حمله وشوله، نو تقریبا د 18 کلن ځوان چې ویې کړله، نو هغه ته بیا مخکې خلکو پوښتنه ځینې کړله فدایي مخکې چې ته ولې فدایي حمله کوې؟ اوس زما مشر له شهید شوي ما په کور کې ولدي چې فدایي غټ نعمت دی، د لاسه ونه کړې ژر تر ژره خپل فدایي حمله درسره، نو ځکه بیا هغه فدایي حملې ته جواز فدایي حمله وکړه. نو په اسلام کې فدایي حمله غلط.
د اسلام د نظره څنګه دی؟
د اسلام د نظر هم د علماو د تفاسیرو سره معلومیږي، د علماو د مجلسو سره معلومیږي چې علماو اجازه ورکړې
ده. دغه فدایي حملې چې کېده یوازې افغانان دي او که خارجیان هم شته ورسره؟
شاید خو د نړۍ مسلمانان به یې پکې کې، خو لیکن اکثریت افغانان دي.
Most ordinary Afghans like these had never even heard of suicide bombing before 2001. Suicide bombing was not a big phenomenon in Afghanistan. The very first suicide bombing happened on September the 9th, 2001, when a Mujahideen leader named Ahmed Shah Massoud was assassinated by some Arab extremists. But until that point, there had never been a suicide bombing, and even after that, they were not particularly common. Through 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, you had just a smattering of these incidents, and they were usually blamed on foreign terrorists. But then something happened in 2005. There was a real explosion. To 2006, 2007, you saw a massive escalation in these events, and now they're all too common. Here in Kandahar, of course, we're standing at the epicenter of these events. A UN study found that there were more suicide bombings here last year than any other place. And they're getting bigger. Just yesterday, as I speak, 37 Afghans died in a massive blast. The day before that, more than 100 Afghans died in another massive suicide bombing. And so a lot of people in this country are asking themselves, what happened? What changed? The Afghan government likes to blame Pakistan. They often bring failed suicide bombers and trot them in front of the media, sit them down for interviews. I've done that myself. I sat down with a bunch of failed would-be jihadists that the governor of Kandahar brought out for us to talk to. But the Afghan government in doing that is trying to tell a story, tell a very specific kind of story. And they'll exclude some information that doesn't fit that narrative. So for instance, when I sat down with the would-be jihadists here in Kandahar, they actually excluded an Afghan from the group. He had been part of their team, part of this attack team, but he wasn't put in front of the media because he didn't fit the picture. So we went out in search of our own picture, and we asked them about their attitudes towards suicide bombing. We found this kind of interesting because suicide bombing has actually been a subject of some debate within the Taliban movement itself. Because so many suicide bombs kill a lot of civilians and not so many of their intended targets, some of the Taliban have said that, look, this is really not something we should be involved with. We are losing popular support. The main thing that the Taliban can offer people in rural Afghanistan is security. That's their main claim to fame. They say that, you know, when we were in power, things were more secure, which is actually true. And so the idea is that having a suicide bomb disrupts that security and disrupts the Taliban's claim to fame. But you have to look at where the suicide bombs are happening. A lot of them are happening in urban centers. Those are understood as being government centers, government places. And so in many ways, the rise in suicide bombings is seen as a way of disrupting the government of Afghanistan's promise of protection. That the Taliban say to the villagers, okay, we're protecting you here in the villages, but in these urban enclaves that are controlled by the government, the Taliban can go in and disrupt lives, wreak havoc, cause chaos, burn down shops, kill civilians, and that undermines the government of Afghanistan. So why is this happening? Where do these people come from? The interesting thing is that a UN study in May 2007 found that most of the jihadis who are responsible for these attacks come from Waziristan. That's talking about the type of Taliban, the type of extremists who are mostly connected with Al-Qaeda. There's a leader named Jalaluddin Haqqani who's been blamed. You're talking about a nexus of particularly extreme groups. Baitullah Masood of the Pakistani Taliban, Mansour Dadullah of the more extreme Dadullah network. And what's interesting is that those extreme Taliban have started to migrate their ideas down here, down into the south.
آیات خو ما آیات پیاد لري د حدیث موتلی دي مګر داسې د صحابه کرام په وخت کې داسې پیښې دي چې کله به صحابه داسې دغه په محمد صلی الله علیه وسلم نو بیا به یو صحابه یو ته په یو حدیث کې راځي د حدیث مضمون دا رقم دی چې د علیه الصلاۃ والسلام په وخت کې صحابه او د کفارو سره جنگ وو نو بیا یو صحابي ابل صحابي ته داسې مو شغه ورته وایو مله ورته ټټکړه.
There's a more traditional group of Afghan Taliban who live in Quetta, who organize attacks here in the south, and they've actually been feuding recently with some of the more extreme jihadists in the north. There have been quite bloody clashes between these two groups, and they've been giving up each other's leaders to being targeted by foreign forces. So what we're seeing in the south when we see this rise in suicide attacks is actually one side of an argument winning, that a group of Taliban is succeeding in persuading another group of Taliban that this is the best way to do business. And we have seen some particularly extreme attacks recently. For instance, there was an attack last month at the beginning of 2008 at the Serena Hotel in Kabul. And these kinds of massive, spectacular attacks are designed to drive a wedge between the foreigners and the Afghans here by creating fear and disorder. So what we're seeing is some kind of a shift within the Taliban movement. We don't know where it's going yet, but it's something to keep watching.
د اسلام نظر څه دی د ابتدایي حملې په باب؟
د اسلام نظر د خلکو چې فورسته خبرې کوي چې دا په اسلام کې نشته، هغه چې داسې خلکو ته وګوري چې کفار په مسلمانانو ملکو ته راغلي چې دا په اسلام کې شته که نشته، هغه دې واره دا ته وګوري. دا یو وحشتناکه خلک دي، دې ته به داسې کار کوي چې دوی ټول زړونه ولوېږي، د هر شي د دوی سره معلومات د هر شي مخنیوی کړی، د دې کار مخنیوی دی نشي کولی انشاءالله.
Dada Sundarla